everyone. Welcome to the Self-Awareness Journey podcast. I'm Melissa Albers.
And I'm JJ Parker. This podcast is for seekers, seekers of happiness and joy, seekers of a centered approach to success in life, seekers of their true, authentic selves.
Get ready for some real talk on everything from anxiety, emotions, and habits to love, compassion, and forgiveness. We know you'll be challenged and enlightened by this conversation. We're so glad you're here. Let's dive in. JJ, I had this really cool thing that I did this week. I was with a big group of people.
Okay.
And we had this schedule to talk about communication, right? It's like...
This was like a leadership development dish thing?
Yeah. It was like, it was around 70 people. And it was, the whole intention was to help people in the organization learn how to communicate with each other better. And after I spent some time with the group, I realized that the primary challenge that the group was having was self-advocacy. It was super
about that
interesting.
Before.
yeah. And so what we quickly discovered in our group conversations was that if you don't feel like you can advocate for yourself, a lot of people will automatically then expect other people to advocate for them. Not on purpose, it's just kind of what happens. And so we started to break that down a little bit. Like why, what is it that prevents someone from being able to advocate for themselves? What prevents someone from being able to communicate positively about what they've done, who they are, what they think they deserve?
Yeah.
There's a lot of intentions.
There's a lot going on in there, right? Because
there's a lot.
You start talking about like, you don't want to come off as like super egotistical, like look at me, look at how awesome I am, right?
Yeah.
So you don't like want to brag, maybe,
right?
But maybe you don't have the confidence to say, "Hey, look what I've done," right?
Yep. Yeah. So we did this interesting exercise, and you're exactly right. And most people will land on one of those things and then just sit there. Like, well, I don't feel like I should do that because I'm going to sound like I'm being spoiled or and so they stop right there. And so we dug into this a little bit, and we started to talk about something that I have been noticing more and more lately, and that is ants.
You've been noticing ants. Sounds more like you have like a cleaning problem at your house. Like you like quit leaving chocolate and sugar water all over.
No. So ANTS is an acronym, actually, and it stands for Automatic Negative Thoughts.
Okay.
If anybody's interested in looking this topic up on the Google, there's lots and lots and lots of material on this. But I actually just thought you and I could riff on this a little bit because I think it's at the source of where a lot of these challenges begin. And I'm a fan of wanting to go to the source, not the reaction. And most people don't want to talk about the source. They only want to talk about their reaction and how to change their reaction in a situation. And for me, it's like the way you change the reaction is to actually go to the source and understand the true action. And the true action in the case where you're having trouble advocating for yourself oftentimes is, not often, always, is the story you're telling yourself.
Yeah.
What's the story that you're telling yourself? And we have these running tapes that go on in our heads constantly. And often they are just repetitive, negative thoughts that have become so repetitive that they're automatic and we don't even notice.
Yeah, like a lot of times we're our own worst critic.
Yeah.
Right? And why we do that is pretty fascinating. I don't know why we do it.
Yeah, I think, it's a very habitual experience with people. And so when I said, I'm not going to talk about what you can say to your boss to get a raise. I don't want to talk about, how do you advocate for yourself in one of your relationships. What I want to talk about is how do you advocate for yourself in your relationship with you. And I think one of the very first things is to get to that. Yeah, I think one of the very first things to that piece is to getting to what are your ANTS.
Yeah.
What are your
So
automatic
I'm
negative
curious, like, how did
thoughts?
the group respond to that? Because usually, if you're doing like a group event, it's like Coach Melissa is going to come in and then just tell us what to do.
And it'll be awesome. And we can sit
And
on our
rah, rah, rah,
phones.
we're all going to get jazzed up. And
We can sit on our phones
Like-
and then listen and then go get snacks and then bust
Yeah.
out of here and remember 3% of what we heard, because that's what happens when you go to these big events.
yeah, so here you come into a group and you're like,
Yeah.
we're going to get really down deep into your emotions.
It was
Buckle in.
very quiet for the first few moments. Like, very quiet.
Well, I will say that this is, for you, right? This is kind of like a change in approach for you and the way
Yes.
you do these things, because
Yeah,
for a
completely.
long time, you doing strategic events was, it was, it wasn't so deep. It was the more surface level
Yeah.
stuff. And you've
The rah-rah.
you've in the past, even maybe year or two said, hey, I'm not going to do that anymore. And we're
Yeah.
just going right, like you said, right to
Yeah.
the source of
Yeah.
what this stuff is. And
Yeah.
it's a different approach.
It's a really different approach, and I didn't realize I was making a conscious decision to do that. And it's interesting that you called that out, because that's exactly what's happened. Because my business has fluctuated a lot in 22 years. I used to have my whole P&L for a long time was just personality assessments, and then it was group events, and then I didn't see myself going into executive coaching, and then all of a sudden my business just flip-flopped through the customers' needs and requests to being primarily coaching. And now, since the pandemic, way more people are wanting to get back together as a group, talk together as a team, try to bring together all of these people that have not been together for a couple of years. And so, when they started to ask me to come back and do these things, I really had to make a decision, because I didn't want to take the energy to do the rah-rah. I didn't have it in me anymore.
Yeah.
And so for me, if we're really going to come together to try to work on things, if I'm involved, it's going to be authentic things that
Yeah.
are really going to help people change.
Yeah.
So coming back to ANTS,
Yeah. So here's what I want. Here's a thing I want you to do. Now, I want everyone to do it.
okay,
Speaking of ants,
yeah.
don't think about an ant right now.
Nope.
I'm serious. Stop thinking about ants, like little
Yeah,
crawly black little dots all over the ground.
I was actually picturing red ones that were carrying leaves across the trail when I was in Costa Rica.
Yeah, well, stop thinking about it.
You can't do it.
No, you can't.
Can't do
And
it.
actually, I only bring that up because like there was like a famous study
Yeah.
in the 80s where it's like, what did they ask? Like don't think of a white bear or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Right. And so they asked people to not think about a thing. And
Yeah.
the only thing they could think about is the thing they were asked to not think about.
Yeah. It's human. It's
Like
how the human brain works.
overwhelming, like no one could do it.
I can't do it. I can't do it.
So this idea that, like, even if we say, hey, don't think about our negative thoughts, it almost like reinforces
Yes. Yeah.
the negative thought pattern. It's really amazing.
Yeah, it is. And then how quickly, as soon as we hear one of them for
Yeah.
ourselves, how quickly we try to be dismissive of it or make an excuse for it or feel guilty or bad about it.
Yeah.
And that's the really interesting thing, because that is what then just proliferates the more automatic thought. So I actually had, and so 70 people is a big group for this kind of intimate
Yeah.
question. But this is what I said. I said, okay, everybody, what I want you to do right now, without getting, don't get too wound up here. I would really like to hear one of your automatic negative thoughts. And it was really quiet. And it was really quiet.
You asked them to share one of them?
I did,
Okay.
publicly with their peers.
Yeah.
And then I said, okay, I'll start. Why do I have 6 chins? I'm not a big person. I am not overweight. Why do I have 6 chins? I look in the mirror, and that's the first thing I see is 6 chins. And then a voice from the back of the room said, I know I need to lose 20 pounds. And another voice spoke up in a different part of the room and said, where do all these wrinkles come from? And it began this really interesting dialogue about how we will see ourselves, and without even noticing, we are constantly pounding on ourselves about one thing or another.
Yeah,
And
you would never have a friend that talks to you like you talk to yourself.
no, and we've said that in the past, but this is if people are really truly interested in figuring out how to move past this for growth, it has to start with a true quiet allowance to allow ourselves the consciousness to recognize our subconscious thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
That's not that's something that just it's not hard. It's just it requires quiet. It requires intentionality. So if you start talking about, so in this group, these beautiful people were willing to start to talk about how they really felt, and then we just started with the surface stuff. We just started with the physical stuff, right? We didn't talk about the emotional or the mental stuff.
Yeah.
That prevents us from, hey, I've been in this job for 20 years. I've done such a good job. I've worked overtime so often and never mentioned it. I would really like a raise, but I'm scared to ask for that because I don't think I'm good enough. I maybe didn't work enough overtime hours or whatever.
Well, like from a neuroscience perspective, right? Our brain is tuned to like the thought patterns that happen over and over get stronger and stronger.
That's right.
Right. So, that's good
and
in a lot of ways.
They become our norm. They become our norm.
Yeah. Well, that reinforcement of thinking patterns helps us in a lot of ways. Right. It helps us become like really efficient at our jobs.
Right.
Really good at certain things.
At a lot of things. Yeah.
But it has a pretty sharp edge on the other side too, which means that it's really easy for it to get into these habitual thought patterns and really reinforce the bad, even though you don't really want to do that.
Exactly.
And the stronger those get, the more you go over that path over and over, and it's so easy to churn on those. It's much easier to churn on the negative stuff than it is on the positive stuff for some reason. Why do you think that is?
I wish I knew that answer. Because if we
cruel
knew that
irony
answer,
of life. That's
exactly.
the answer.
I think there's so many deep reasons, and I don't know them. I can take a swag at a couple. I think like social acceptance, right? You don't want to try and stand out from your peers. You want to be part of the team. And if you start to call yourself out as overly special, then the team isn't probably going to welcome you in with warm arms. I think there's just a lot of things.
Yeah. It's deeper than we're going to dissect right here.
No question.
Yeah.
No question. But I will tell you this. As we talk about these automatic negative thoughts, the very simple way to look at this is there's two ways people deal with it. Because everybody has them. Everybody has thousands of them probably. Hundreds, tens that keep them up at night. But here's how this manifests. Two ways. I've seen it over and over again. And the first way is the person recognizes it and they have a very bad self-image or they have poor self-esteem and they keep beating that drum over and over again. And so they just stop advocating for themselves and they try to make themselves as small as they can in every situation. That's one way. The other way is people notice that they're feeling this way. They're feeling inadequate. They feel bad because of all of their ANTS and they get angry. And they turn that anger outward, and they want other people to make them feel better because they just can't. Yeah,
so they like seek external validation or other ways to self-soothe.
Yeah, exactly. So, it was a fascinating conversation. People were quietly they were quietly in the conversation, and then as they went on, it became easier.
Yeah.
So what we then did is we took a common cultural challenge in the business to apply this idea and how we could be different, how we could proactively solve it.
Yeah, so what's the What's the can of Raid for our ants problem, our mental ants problem?
What's the can of Raid?
Give me the solution, Melissa.
There were a lot of them. Because what's interesting in the intersection of this conversation, we began to then talk about how it manifests outwardly depending on your personality style. Mm-hmm. So we could agree that we all had these baseline core things that were exactly the same, these automatic thoughts that we'd had forever and ever. We all agreed that, yes, that's something that as humans, that's a thing. We all have it. Mm-hmm. But then where we started to depart was, well, what are the things that we can do outwardly to release or address or work on, getting better at it? And the people that were the more strategic, big picture thinkers, risk takers, were willing to just, now that we're talking about it, I'm just going to wade in.
Blurting it out, right?
I'm just going to wade in. What's the worst that could happen? And then those that are more risk averse, the more specialists, and we've talked about personality tools and that sort of thing, but those who are more detailed or more detail oriented and cautious and rule followers, regulation and policy aware people, felt very anxious about going public with something so different because it seemed like there was a lot of risk associated with it. So just in that part, there was a lot of conversation, and it was such good conversation because obviously in the room we have everyone, right?
Yeah,
we have everybody. So, and I'll give just a couple of highlight examples in a moment. But the other way that we discussed it was if you are more of an introvert or whether you're an extrovert. Because those who were extroverted, if they were risk averse and extroverted, they would still probably be willing to gently have a conversation about something. Maybe not calling themselves out, maybe talking about it more from the group perspective. This would be better for all of us. But it was very interesting how a person's external personality impacted the way they managed their ants. So I think this is another really interesting call out that I wasn't expecting until we got into that conversation.
Yeah, and another reason why kind of self-awareness and understanding your natural brain wiring can help you navigate through to some solutions for for ants.
Yeah. And so the topic that we decided to talk about was, how do you advocate for yourself at work? How do you ask for a raise? How do you say you want a promotion? If there's a promotion, how do you do that? And given all the stories that we tell ourselves, how can we do something different? And it was fascinating because we had 8 or 9 tables, and every single table had a completely different perspective, which I love. Because, as a facilitator, to me, it's like, if you're facilitating something and everybody is just in this rote, do what you're told, everything sounds exactly the same, and after the first table talks, there's nothing else to say, and every table goes, it's what they said. It's what they said. This was so dynamically different. I was floored, and I was so excited about... Excited's not the right word. I was so proud of how that room was showing up, and so thrilled that they had this opportunity. And I know that they got some stuff from this, right? I know they did. They just talked a lot about if they were a real risk averse and they felt that they had these ants that weren't helping them. One of the things that they could do is they could write out all of the things that they felt would be why they should be able to get what they want, so they were able to use data and details from their past to explain. Once they realized they were holding themselves back, that's one thing they could do differently.
I thought I've heard this technique. I thought you were going to say everyone's going to write down their negative thoughts and then burn the paper.
No, that's only with ex-boyfriends, JJ. Come on. I've participated in a couple of those burning events. Those are actually kind of fun.
I mean, if you're not in a fire, you could shred it.
You could shred it. You could shred it, and you could flush it.
Flush it down the toilet.
Well, anyway, I just thought this was such an interesting topic because I think that ants are real.
Okay.
And
yeah, but you're just totally avoided my earlier question because I'm like I want to skip to the end part.
like a pit bull on a rag doll this morning, aren't you?
Well, I think we should talk about like what are some techniques when you catch yourself going back to that same thinking pattern. Like, what do you think we can do about that? Because it's nice to now be aware, like, oh yeah, I do have this habitual thought pattern.
Yeah.
Now what?
Yeah.
Like,
So I have 2 techniques.
Okay.
And I was actually going to go there too because I think that this is really, hopefully people will find this a beneficial exercise. And they're 2 very different techniques. First one is when you are with your thoughts and all of a sudden you say to yourself, I have to lose 20 pounds. Or I have to stop procrastinating. I'm such a procrastinator. I'm always okay. As soon as we catch ourselves in that repetitive on repeat, and it's negative, it doesn't make us feel good. Rather than pushing it away, which is what most people do because they start to feel guilty, they hate the feeling. It's like, I'm thinking this thought that makes me feel like crap. I hate this feeling. I don't want to feel like this. So I'm going to change it. I'm going to go do something else. I'm going to whatever. I don't want to do it. That's one. But instead of doing that, one of the techniques is to sit with it and to ask yourself questions. And to really be with it. So for example, what part of this thought is for me? Where did this thought come from? How is this thought serving me today? And so to sit with it instead of shoving it away, sit with it and then just explore what it really is. Because it might not even be real. It's highly likely it's not real. The other technique I actually had this group do, and I love this. And I encourage everyone to do this. And that is to take out a pad of paper and a pen and push your timer on your phone for 10 minutes. And at the top of the page, write, what are my top 3 to 5 ants? Okay? We're not going to burn it. But at the top of the page, what are my 3 to 5 ants? Set a timer for 10 minutes. Set your pen on your paper. And when that timer begins, you just start to write. You don't worry about what you're writing. You can't stop writing for 10 minutes. And if you hit a spot where you go, I don't know what to write anymore, then just write that. I don't know what to write right now. And here's what happens. You go into a different level. So the first couple of things that you write are going to be like very, wrote what you would expect. Well, because I need to lose the weight, okay, or whatever. But as you continue to do that exercise in that journal, you will get to the deeper levels of what it actually means for you. Where did it come from? Why does it matter to you? Is it something that's serving you? Was it something that you said to yourself before because it really worked for you, but you've outgrown that now? It doesn't work for you. And after you allow yourself that writing, sit with that and go back and reflect on the writing and see what parts are not actually true at all. And out of the ones that you've listed, are there any that you're ready to give up? Are there any that you're ready to give up? And one of the things that you can do to give it up is, and I was telling you this and we were laughing about it, but you can put a rubber band around your wrist or a bracelet or a ring or whatever. And every time you catch that thought crossing your mind, you just switch sides. You just take it off of one wrist and put it on the other. And no,
I thought you were going to say you snap it on your wrist.
You get a big red welt. You will learn.
You inflict a little bit of self-pain when it happens. It's like a shock collar for.
No, that is not the warm and supportive suggestion that I'm offering. But those are 2 techniques, and there may be other more simple ones. And quite frankly, just talking about it today, just listening to it today, is absolutely a technique for you to have some awareness. Like, you can't unknow once you know something.
Yep.
You can't unknow it unless you work really, really, really hard to put it back in the box. If it's something that's bothering you and you all of a sudden have awareness about it and you hear us talking about it and you start going, yep, that's mine. Like, even with body image, for example, rather than giving yourself a hard time, another thing that people can do, honestly, is to give themselves the reverse thought.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like, do you remember like the like that Saturday Night Live from like, it was maybe the 80s or 90s with Jack Handy, like deep thoughts from Jack Handy.
Oh my God, I have a book of his. I loved that.
But this whole it's like a parody of like, what would he say? Like, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and
oh my gosh,
darn it, people like me, or something like that.
Oh my gosh, he had hilarious things.
But just that idea, I mean, obviously that was over the top, but the idea that you have like you take one of your ants, and you say, I'm going to make the reverse of this, is if you take the weight thing, you can say, hey, I'm happy, I'm healthy, and I'm full of energy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And if you just daily do that as a daily affirmation, like you're brushing your teeth, you say that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You can start changing those thought patterns because, again, it's the thoughts that go over and over are the ones that get stronger. Those are the muscles that get stronger. So purposely train the right muscles.
And to have gratitude, like with your body, for example. You know, people that are like, I don't exercise enough, or how come I'm overweight, or I'm so flabby here, or I'm that. Rather than that, like, I am so grateful that this body has carried me around for all these years. Like, it has taken care of me even when I have pounded on it, even when I haven't eaten well, or I've poisoned it with a lot of alcohol. My body still performs for me, and I am so lucky that I've got it. I mean, honestly, so yes, I totally agree with you, is being able to think about the opposite of that.
Yep. All right. These are good techniques. I'm going to go get my can of Raid and start killing some ants.
In conclusion, I would like to give you one Jack Handy thought. Marta and I were driving, and we saw a sign that said, "Watch for falling rocks." And Marta said, "I think it should say, watch for pretty rocks."
What?
That's exactly one of them. No kidding. So stupid. But yes, I agree. I love this. Is such a great conversation, and I hope it's helpful.
Did you enjoy this episode? Please go to your favorite podcast platform to subscribe, rate, and leave a review so others can discover it as well.
Growing self-awareness is a lifelong journey, and there's always further to go. And it's better when we're all in it together. Please think of someone you know who could benefit from hearing today's conversation and share this episode with them. We can't thank you enough for listening. Until next time, happy exploring, seekers.